All right, y'all. Ingram and Bud here for the rare dual instant reaction podcast. We both were fortunate enough to be able to make our way over to Township. Had absolutely incredible afternoon. Great to see as many people out there as we did. You never know how many people are going to show up for a team that's going 0-3, but fantastic turnout at Township. Couldn't have asked for better weather and couldn't have asked for a better day.
Before the game.
Unfortunately, couldn't have asked for a worse first half and then a really impressive second half. So we're going to try to make sense of that and come to some kind of conclusion as to what the rest of the season looks like and if you can still sell your message to kids. It's a great question. I don't know if you can point to kids that you're 0-4, but you fought like hell in the second half and played really well and had a legitimate chance to at least tie the game in the last 5 minutes, last 2 minutes. Interesting day that we saw today, Bud. Certainly.
That game felt like a marathon. Just it took absolutely forever to get done with. I mean, basically 4 full hours of game time almost. Let's set the table because one of the most important things that we said in the preview show was who's going to play and who's not going to play. So Murray Smith, the center, did not play. Jordan Travis, the quarterback, did not play. Who else didn't play here? Fabian Lovett. That's the one I wasn't.
Fabian Lovett.
Yeah.
I heard some rumblings of that, but I would be lying if I told you I was confident that Fabian Lovett was not going to play. That was let me put it this way. To see him in street clothes was a surprise.
Yeah. Did you see Akeem Dent at all?
I didn't see Dent.
I didn't see him on the sideline.
Yeah.
Like he didn't start, and I didn't.
Dent was missing.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying he wasn't there, but I didn't see him. Like our seats are right there on the 50.
Travis J didn't appear for the first 10 minutes. I don't know if that was intentional.
But it happened for the Jacksonville State game too.
Yeah,
to be fair.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We think that was probably disciplinary.
Yeah,
in that one. So, look, Louisville just absolutely boat raced you in the first half. They came out and threw the football much more effectively than I thought they would be able to throw it, and they stopped the run on early downs against your run game. I guess we'll start defensively. That was just terrible first half defense.
Terrible first half. Safeties look confused, which might make sense if you had as much turnover in personnel as you did. Miko Dotson, the instant reaction, unfortunately, turns too frequently in, I wouldn't say trying to blame kids, but probably too critical of kids. So I'll have to go back and look at it. Obviously, he made a nice play where he got a forced fumble later in the game. You weren't fortunate enough to recover it, but if you're starting 9, that's a concern as to what you can ultimately get there. The first half looked like the sum of all fears. I mean, when you're down 17-0, really before you can even bat an eye, you have to wonder as to whether or not there's anything left in the gas tank, whether it be physically or just give a damn. Ultimately, the team responded well, but the first half was disastrous, and you can't completely write off the first half. You certainly can't completely bank off the second half either. But yeah, really disappointing start to the game. You let a guy get behind you on the third play of the game, which is something that we talked all week about that you really can't do. I mean, you can't get fooled and have somebody slip behind you, and that happens immediately. You did not get punished as much on some of the stretch stuff that I thought you did. Credit to the ends and linebackers, decent contained, didn't overrun. Like I thought you were honestly a pretty well-developed candidate to overrun plays and give up significant cutbacks. But, to be interested, Bud, and I don't mean to just gloss over the game, but as we sit here and we talk about coming into the year, really this is all about keeping a class together. Can you sell kids that you didn't quit in the second half? Can you sell kids that you had a really impressive half? Do they even care as to the situational aspects of the game? And when you're talking about recruits, I don't know. Because if they're just looking at a score line, then today was just another check mark in a season of disappointments. If they actually watched the game, then you saw a team that didn't quit. You saw a team that came back. You saw a team that continued to run hard. Another impressive day for Corbin and Ward, certainly. But, you're 0-4. And 0-4 can only be glossed up in so many different ways.
So, first of all, I agree with that. Obviously, if the recruits, if they stayed and watched the whole game, right, if they didn't shut it off at halftime, which a lot of people book out of there at halftime. So, first half, I think FSU, if you listen to the broadcast, and I thought the broadcast did a nice job today, much better than last week's.
An improvement.
Yeah. They talked about how this team was bound and determined not to let what happened to them last year happen to them this year against Louisville. And result-wise, the first half was just like the first half last year. But how they got there was somewhat different. FSU did do a much better job stopping the run. I think after seeing Wake and Notre Dame and Louisville, we can say FSU has a pretty good run defense.
The line's legit. I mean, we have banked on that and we have bragged about them. Look, particularly if you get that kind of performance without having what is probably your second best defender in Lovett on the field, then I give you credit up front. I mean, you did really well. Briggs had another solid day. I thought that the lineman from South Carolina's game matched what Louisville was going to do pretty well.
Yeah.
And was really impressive with what Kier was able to give you out there. We'll have to go back and look at film. I thought Deloach played fairly well. Again, game time is limited on what you can base off kids, and for where we sat in the first half is even more limited. But I thought Deloach played pretty well. I thought Lindy situationally played okay. But it's just it's a matter of trying to figure out what you're really trying to do in the secondary.
The back end,
who your pieces are that you can count on, and who you feel comfortable pushing your chips out into the middle of the table.
It concerns me that they had to sell out that much to stop the run, and Louisville was ready for it. And when they played zone, they didn't pass guys off very well and pick them up. When they played man, Louisville would routinely hit them with crossers, and they didn't have good answers for it defensively. Now, look, I know both your normal starting safeties, at least in the first half, Dent and Sidney Williams weren't there, right? Dent, we don't know what's up with him. Sidney Williams obviously had the targeting carryover ejection from the Wake Forest game. So that's tough, right? But Louisville, they didn't punt in the first half, right?
Don't remember.
I don't remember. I think they scored pretty much every possession in the first half. And 31 points is like Louisville's got an okay offense. It's not great. Like there's not a receiver out there you're like, oh, that guy, he's a monster. The back is not special, right? The offensive line it's serviceable. I think you saw the difference between like just a horrendous offensive line and the serviceable one there in Louisville today. Maybe it's actually a little better than I'm giving credit for. Could be. But like I think Louisville outcoached Adam Fuller. I really do. And that's I just don't think that's a good enough passing offense to where you can say, yeah, that's acceptable. That's understandable.
Yeah.
They're not missing that many guys that you should be that bad in pass coverage. If you had told Mark Ennis, hey, they're really going to limit Louisville's run game in the preview, I think he would have thought Louisville would be in for a dogfight. And we'll get to the dogfight because they were kind of in one late. But kind of the same thing with Wake last week. When Wake was trying to score, they really were able to do so.
Yeah.
And then second half, get a big lead. They kind of shut it down. This is this team plays like this is a hard team to salt the game away on because they do stop the run well.
Yeah. I was also going to say it's a hard team to evaluate because how much of your rushing success
I want to get to this too. Yeah.
is
why do you think they can't run the ball when opposing teams are trying to stop the run?
And Lord knows I love Corbin and I love what Ward has developed into and love the players that those guys are. But how much of our second half success running the ball is based off other teams being comfortable with you doing so?
I think a lot. Go back and watch. If you guys have this on YouTube TV or DVR or whatever, how often is Louisville in pass rush stance?
Yeah.
Right. A lot of weight on their front hand. They're trying to tee off, and FSU successfully running the ball against them. And like to Norvell and Dillingham's credit, right? Like you're trying to score some kind of points, and like they seem to do a very nice job of that. I'll give them some credit here of not, hey, we're down 14 points. We have to just start dropping back every single play and chucking it deep. Like you know FSU's game plan here, right? They're down 10 points, 11 points late in the third quarter. They were going to keep running the ball. We're going to keep chucking the ball short to our backs. We're going to hit some guys maybe up the seam, especially as everybody else starts to play off and start to pass rush. We're going to run some of that counter stuff. We're going to run the ball consistently on 2nd and 9, even though people,
very aggressive situationally, but patient overall. I mean, if they realize they have opportunity to run the ball and get back in the game and establish a run, they do a good job of doing it. The challenge from people from our perspectives is figuring out, are you really that good of a team at running
the ball? It's not garbage time yet.
It's not garbage time.
But they're clearly playing it situationally different. Otherwise, I think you'd be able to run the ball better in the first half.
Yeah.
Because teams are not scared of McKenzie Milton's arm at all. No. They don't. They give you the pass. He can't really hit it.
People know what you are, and they certainly know what you are from a personnel perspective. I mean, whether it be manning up your wide receivers. By the way, wide receivers, I've been, and I don't want to give the kid too much praise, so I'll go back and look at it, but I thought Andrew Parchment played a light years better game than he has any other game. There was more consistent effort there and buy-in, if you want to use that phrase, than we've seen previously. So I'll be interested to go back, see if that carries over in anything other than kind of a lifetime watch. But credit to Seven, there was a little bit of a transition there, in my opinion, from what you've seen from other game time situations.
Yeah, I mean, they were not pretty clear they were not happy with his buy-in earlier this year.
Yeah,
if you get 4 snaps against Wake?
I was going to say, if you get 5 snaps or whatever it was against Wake, then obviously a message was sent and perhaps a message was received.
Norvell was definitely coaching up the receivers on the sideline a whole lot. I did notice early in the game, definitely I don't think he was happy with how they were playing early on. I mean,
Burrell in a boot and buggy, that is somebody that I've been questionable about the status of. Not that Burrell's going to turn your season around or anything else, but a guy that featured heavily in Notre Dame, particularly with some of the select packages that you had so much success with. And then to be kind of relatively unheard of, that's more explanatory. But look, like I said, if you knew that Lovett wasn't going to be there, then I would have been, even more concerned. We'll say there was a name on offense thrown out that they were concerned with. He ended up playing, so maybe a little bit more optimistic than I was Thursday when we recorded the preview. But damn, if this team been hard to get a feel for. I mean, obviously you're 0-4, and 0-4 is only 0-4, and you can't spin it in too many ways. But
it's not like, are they good? It's like, how bad are they?
How bad are they?
Like, neutral game state, they're pretty bad. I mean, what did they allow? 7 sacks today, I think.
No, yeah,
I mean, I can
at least 6.
I got the box score here. 6 sacks, 11 tackles for loss on 75 snaps. It's hard to win games like that, right? They'll have these encouraging plays. You're like, oh, it's another tackle for loss. It's another sack. And for all the good stuff they did on offense, and they did do some good stuff on offense, right? They had 450 yards of offense.
Corbin ran for 160. I mean, he did
6 yards of play.
Yeah.
But let's be real here. Louisville shut it down.
Yeah.
Louisville was not trying their damnedest to score in the second half, I don't think. I really don't. We saw the same thing with Wake last week. It's not technically garbage time yet, but it's very clear these teams, I think they're wrong about this, kind of, but they're like, all right, if the shoot's done, they're not going to score, and they just start running the ball. They're not keeping the pedal to the metal coming out of the second half there. We saw it with Wake. We saw it with Louisville, and it's like, oh, this FSU offense is kind of going to fool you into thinking that it's good. And I just think it's kind of not.
Yeah.
Look, and that's understating it. We know it's not good. What I'm saying is, how much of that stuff do you think was real? Because look at FSU's drive chart in the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, they had the 75-yarder. That was nice, right? And then they had the one right before the half, which was great. They also had -7, 22, 4, 21. In the second half, they moved the ball. There was a lot more drives where they had multiple first downs on, and actually were able to move it some. They were not able to score it, obviously. They had the opening score of the half, and then 2 field goals, 2 turnovers and downs, and a pick.
And we mentioned Louisville's success, but it's even more stark when it's in front of you. Open the game with touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Now, what do you think? Do you think Adam Fuller? Because here's the remaining drives. All right, 18-20, -5, 8-8, 4, 12, 8, and then kneel down. Do you think that Adam Fuller suddenly found a magic recipe to stop them, or do you think it was more a situation of Louisville kind of went into shutdown mode?
I think part of it was getting Travis Jay back in the game. Now, once Jay got back in the game, it didn't. They still scored on you. I think 2 possessions. I think Jay. To us, it looked like Jay sat for the first 10 minutes. We'll go back and look and ask some people as to whether there's any correlation there or if that's just coincidence. But I do think Jay's an improvement over some of the other options out there. But no, I think it's Louisville, transitioning what they want to do, or at least what their focus is. And ultimately, it both makes your defense look a little bit better, and on the other side of the ball, makes you look like probably a little bit better running team than you are.
But for perception purposes, it is good that they actually fought. Like I told Ingram, no moral victories in this game. Like Notre Dame, you're pretty clearly outgunned. Louisville, you're somewhat outgunned due to the injuries, but people aren't going to realize that. Like they didn't get a standing O today for staying and fighting. I will note they didn't quit though, and man, I really thought they were going to quit.
They didn't quit. Sure as hell felt like they were going to quit about 10 minutes into the second quarter. I mean, it was rough. We're probably a little bit closer to the sidelines at times than we'd like to be. And at the same time, you get a better view of some of the off the field stuff, if that's what you want to classify it as. And it did not look like a sideline that was all that built into it, but credit to them. I mean, whether it's a change of philosophy from Louisville or anything else, you still have to go out there, fight, make plays. And Florida State did that. Again, the hard thing to determine is whether or not that lands with recruits, whether or not you can sell your message based off the fact that you outscored Louisville 10-0 in the second half. I don't know. I don't know if that matters at all. But it was another really disappointing start to a game, another decent finish. And unfortunately, it's another game where Florida State comes up short and adds another tick to the column that is the loss column. So, we'll certainly have more opportunities to go back and look at this and evaluate it more. Again, want to stress that the beginning of the day at Township couldn't have gone any better. Matt Lewis from Congruity was out there. Fantastic time.
Got to see
him. Chad was out
legendary
there.
Team. I mean,
we put a little hot sauce on our cheese earlier this morning. We had almost every sponsor represented. Brilliant time.
Louisiana hot sauce, koozie.
Yeah,
it was a great time.
Koozies. We're working it, certainly.
So, young guys got in the game. They played Cooper a lot. They played Knowles a lot. I think that's encouraging. Those are 2 guys that we know, the staff likes a whole lot. 11 continues to come on for you on offense. That's a sign, of positivity. Is next week's game a game that you can win without Murray Smith? I do think it comes back to that. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this game.
Yeah.
But look, when Louisville was trying to shut down this offense, and not play, and you weren't playing left-handed, you didn't really do much, man.
I don't know what your war is at center. Your wins above replacement, really. I think Bayvion's okay. I think it's much more drastic at left or at right tackle. I don't think your right tackle is particularly healthy. But
do you think Bayvion would start over DLT or Gibbons if you were able to play Smith at center?
He may. I have health concerns spread throughout the entirety of the offensive line.
I don't think either of those guards
put it that way. And concern as to how much those guys are going to be able to go. So we'll see. Syracuse is not maybe the walkover that some would have thought at the beginning of the year. It's going to be a challenge to get any win this year. Maybe even UMass, as silly as that sounds, but you've got a certain amount of bodies that you felt comfortable at offensive line. You've kicked 1 kid out. You've had 2 other kids injured, and you have maybe as many as 3 who are consistently dealing with injuries, trying to figure out whether or not they can go from a week-to-week perspective, and that's unfortunately just going to limit what you can do. I do think that it was. Look, I ultimately think Jordan Travis is your best option at quarterback if he's healthy and he can do some things. I do think it was good to go in this game with just 1 quarterback. You knew what you were going to be. You had to
not necessarily a choice, obviously.
Right.
As we saw Jordan limping around on the sideline pregame.
You had to kind of ride or die with McKenzie, for a lack of better words, and maybe that gave you a little bit more both consistency of who your quarterback was going to be and consistency of kind of game plan and nobody looking over their shoulder. And McKenzie, showed you good and bad, and that's kind of what we've come to expect through 4 games with McKenzie Milton. So, yeah, just a hard team to make sense of, to be honest with you. Are they, do they quit? That much we know they don't. Is there not quitting aided by some adjustments and philosophical changes in the second half? Yeah, I probably think so. But we'll see. The year's all about trying to keep this class together, and if you can get on the phone with guys with the last name that McCall, Hunter, Duffy, etc., and sell the message that you're, continuing to grow and almost had a chance to come back and send that into overtime, then maybe that lands. But it's certainly not where you wanted to be through 4 games so far this year.
So I agree with that as far as they're like probably adjustments help not quit. But I really do think that these guys could start to play really selfishly on defense. And they did, like, they kept playing their game. You weren't seeing guys jumping out of gaps and just try to play hero ball. So, look, obviously, they're going to have to take a look at the defense coordinator at the end of the year. It's going to happen, right? The look will happen. I don't know if change is going to happen. But ultimately, I mean, they did kind of not, completely fall apart in the second half. They didn't allow any points in the second half, which is great. They got the offense the ball back a whole lot of times in that second half. Even though I agree with you, I think part of it is that Louisville is trying to just, they got an 18-point lead. They're not trying to do any turnovers.
To be fair, Louisville's not shutting it down when they go for it on 4th down and Brownlee comes up and makes it. There were some plays there. I don't want to completely wash over
that's
that.
Fair.
But I do think that a shift in mentality probably helps you make a game more competitive, and that's not the first week that that's happened.
I agree with that. All right, so the fourth and like 3.5 call, where McKenzie turns to the sideline and acts like he's talking to the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Did you like it? Did you hate it?
We tried that in high school a couple of times, which was the immediate comment that I made to Bud. I think we probably sold it a little better, a little bit better in high school. I'll have to go back and look. People who I think know football told me that if Jordan Wilson was also on the same page as McKenzie and the rest of the offense, that maybe that's a successful play. And he is evidently also confused as to what's going on, so it doesn't sprint. I don't know. Again, this is instant reaction. We don't have a chance to go back and look at things. I'll just reiterate something that Bud and I have said from the beginning. When you're constantly trying to throw curveballs, and I'm speaking in a metaphorical sense here, when you're constantly trying to trick people, then you've got to constantly try to trick people. And this is the second game in a row where obviously these are not completely congruous, but you've come down to a 4th down play and had to do something that could only leave you scratching your head as to, like, was the only reason we call that because no one else would ever consider that that's what's actually coming, which, may very well be the case. I didn't hate it. Certainly that's not my biggest gripe as to what happened today. It would more be based off what we showed on defense in the first quarter. But
you had problems with that?
Yeah, I did have problems with the whole let's let them score thing. Yeah. It's not an example in play calling history, certainly. But of all the things that are wrong, I don't know that continuing to try to trick people is necessarily the greatest plan, but it may be the best plan that you have if you're the offensive coordinator.
I agree with that. I do recall seeing this work in the NFL. So, do you remember the Burt Emanuel game where they said it was no catch? It was Bucks Rams. It was in St. Louis back when the Rams were still in St. Louis. Tony Dungy team, I think a Dick Vermeil team or Mike Marks team, one of the two. I hope I'm not conflating games here, but it was that era, right? And they're playing. It's in the dome, and Kurt Warner acts like he's pissed about something. Turns, begins to walk toward the sideline, which is technically like going in motion. Snaps his chin strap off, right, and or begins to. The Tampa Bay defensive lineman kind of get another stance to go to a knee. Ball snapped. Their pancake. Marshall Faulk runs for the first down. It didn't work out for us.
No.
Again, why are you having to run that play? Because you've had a lot of success running the football in the second half. But in that play,
right,
4th and 2.5, 4th and 3, they're not playing pass. They're playing run. And that's why you're a bad short yardage team right now. You're having to trick people all the time. I will say, you want to talk about like grab bag and progression of play calling, all this stuff. First half, I thought there was actually something pretty interesting going on. They're going into the north end zone, right? They have a short yardage play. It's the play where Mackenzie Milton ends up, it looks like it's totally botched, and it kind of was. Mackenzie Milton ends up rushing for the first down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, I think it's a 2-by formation, but anyway, the receiver comes, the back is to the play side, right? So they fake the jet to the receiver. The receiver ends up blocking, and then they're running what looks to be just a little speed option, right? With the back, or excuse me, with the receiver who's on the jet motion as sort of a lead blocker. The play that Ward scores on going into the south end zone in the second quarter is literally something they set up in the first quarter. So, like, you want to talk about play progression. They ran that exact same motion back to the same side. Initial step, what happens? They actually run counter off it. Louisville, having seen this play, and even if it didn't work, Louisville still saw it in the previous quarter. They are trying to set things up. They are making adjustments and changes. They're just the one thing that doesn't change is that they're still having to try to trick people. In some ways, running the ball when it's 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 11 and the defense is playing pass is trying to trick people, trying to keep them off balance. Mm-hmm. And every offense wants to keep people off balance, but like your only option is to keep people off balance sometimes. So, yeah, pretty wild day of college football, by the way.
Yeah, crazy day. Clemson obviously loses. Auburn flirts like hell against losing against Georgia State.
Minnesota loses as a bigger favorite than FSU was.
Okay.
31 points at favorite at home to Bowling Green. Did UConn pull it off against Wyoming?
Rode the boat. Well, if UConn beat anybody, then that's
they were
a shocker in and of itself.
They were a 30-point home dog. I'm looking to see how that thing finished here. No, Wyoming pulled it out 24-22. So disappointing there. Obviously, it'd be cool to see UConn get a game somehow. Duke almost lost it. Well, they didn't almost lose in the end, but like that was pretty close. Arkansas gets its quarterback knocked out of the game and beats A&M.
Fighting Pick Suey goes and beats Jimbo. That's wild.
I mean, it was a wild day of college football.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Chancey, who we met in the stands.
Yeah.
You wanted to shout out on the show? Appreciate you listening, man.
It's great. I love that people walked up to Bud and were like, "Hey, did you get your house through no loans?" And he's like, "Well, yes, I did.
Twice.
But, I'm also the host of this podcast, so that's the other way that I got this T-shirt." So, no, it's great, man. It's incredible to see how many Nolecast shirts, how many of the old school punting and bunting shirts were running around. A couple fans with hats. Just certainly, again, want to reiterate where we started. Amazing to see so many people show up for the tailgate over there at Township. 0-4 in your heart, certainly, but a hell of a good time. And we'll have to see what comes to Syracuse as they're, it's an interesting team. It would be great to see if they continue to battle. I will give them credit. And this is I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but this is not a podcast that hurls praise at you for not quitting. But it's a team that continues to fight, and you have to think that ultimately, some of that fight comes together if it stays together, and maybe you get a couple wins at the end of the season that at the beginning of the year we didn't think. I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to beat Clemson because I don't think you're going to. But there are some games out there that maybe you pull a little bit of an upset, and what looks like a disaster doesn't turn into quite as much of a disaster as it is. But nonetheless. You played 4, you've lost 4. You'll have to go and see what this looks like against Syracuse next week. But on the whole, it's a really tough start to the season.
Yeah, it would be tough to imagine a tougher start. We'll see if they get Jordan back. I don't know, man. Like based on the way he was limping around, his asset is his legs, right?
Limping around, wearing a pretty heavy knee brace for the first time that I've seen. Doesn't mean
Smith still in street clothes.
Fabian just in street clothes in general surprised me. But yeah, we'll have to see. Certainly a team that's had nobody can afford concentrated injuries. Certainly nobody can afford concentrated injuries with a roster like this, as limited as it is. But, there's certainly some small things of positivity to to try to see whether or not that continues in the back half of the schedule. Because so far through the first 35% or so, it's been about as disappointing as it can be from a record perspective. And maybe some of this fight or buy-in, if you choose to believe that it's there, helps you win 1 or 2 games at the end of the season or the back half of the season that otherwise you didn't think you had a real good chance of. So
people are tweeting me. Did I actually say 31-23?
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember exactly.
Maybe
I think I was somewhere in the area. I said 13 points. So I think I was 36-23, somewhere in that area. And honestly, Florida State's
it went better than I thought it was
it
going to.
went better than I thought it would. It went significantly better than I thought it was going to, based off some conversations that I had on Thursday. So credit to those kids going out and playing a little bit better than that of what I thought at the end of the week.
All right, buddy. Do this again Monday.
We'll do it again. Absolutely. Thank you for the listens. Thank you for the fantastic support out of Township and everything else today. Patreon members, sponsors, Congruity, Louisiana Hot Sauce, Tarpon Sellers, obviously Chad and Shannon, Resolution Home Loans, and they're, like we said, like we've talked about the whole time. Over there at Township, Madso, no better place to tailgate, end a game, whatever else, for the Table Restaurant Group. We appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.